Hey, this is Gdumcius with MassLive.com. I'm here with Adam Fine. He is a managing partner specializing in marijuana law at Vicente Sederberg. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
All right, and we're in Quincy. That's a little south of Boston, and we're doing this Facebook Live as at the State House, the Senate and the House have been speeding a bill to the governor's desk, rewriting actually two marijuana laws in Massachusetts. The medical marijuana law passed a couple of years ago, and then the recreational marijuana bill that voters approved. 1.8 million voters voted for in November. And there's been a lot of controversy about that. But I'm here with Adam, and he's going to answer some of my questions. And if you've got questions, feel free. We're going to be here for about 15 minutes just chatting about marijuana law in Massachusetts. And I think for a lot of people, probably the first question is, what does this mean for home growing, for my own personal limits? Does this bill that lawmakers are getting to the governor's desk, does that tamper with that at all?
It doesn't, and that's one of the great things. Credit to where credit's due which is the lawmakers. They put together a compromise here. Not everyone's going to be happy with it, but certainly home growers should be happy because they are not touching the same limits that were under question for in effect, and so you can continue to grow your home within the confines of what the law is, which is that six plant number for an individual, and then a maximum of 12 per household.
And you can still gift up to an ounce of marijuana to somebody, right, for free?
Correct, without remuneration and without kind of marketing or any. It's got to be a private transaction.
Okay. And if anybody wants to read the bill text, we do have it up on MassLive.com. 75 pages. Not exactly a fun read, but it is a fascinating one. I did want to ask on the medical marijuana side. This rolls medical marijuana from the Department of Public Health to the Cannabis Control Commission, a new entity that's being created. And you've done some work on medical marijuana. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that, about how patients might be affected or not affected.
Sure. Well, the hope is that patients aren't affected at all, and I think the Mass Patient Organization, Nicole Snow and others, and Michael LaTulip and other patient advocates have done a really good job, I think, in ensuring that the medical program kind of stays in place and that is not negatively affected by this new law. In terms of, so patients really should not see a negative impact. In fact, there's some improvements. The patient registration process, it will now allow for kind of electronic certification, which means that will kind of serve as your temporary registration, which means that if you go to a physician, they'll issue a certification, and that will immediately get you into the system and allow you to access medicine. So there's some improvements there. It's an 18-month transition period into the new Cannabis Control Commission that will allow for some a good period of time to make sure that there's negative impacts on patients and see a smooth transition and coexistence between recreational and between medical and adult use markets.
Again, I'm Gdumcius, he's Adam Fine, and we're talking marijuana law as lawmakers up on Beacon Hill at the State House are rewriting the voter-approved law that was passed in November, which you helped craft.
Yes, I was on the drafting committee along with a lot of other very smart people. We were. It was a good law, and this, and I think they took a lot of. They did not. They kept a lot of the law in place. There's some changes, obviously, that I think. Some people may or may not be upset about, with respect to taxes and local control, but overall, a lot of question 4 was kept intact, which is good to see.
Right, so they're going up to 20% tax. The original law had 12%, and they were also setting up a pretty complicated setup there for what happens if your city or town voted for or against marijuana in November. And it sounds like they're splitting the difference. Both the House and the Senate came at it from different ways. How's it going to work if your city or town voted for marijuana if the city officials want to restrict pot shops?
Sure. So if your town voted for it, your city or town voted for it in November, then you're in a much better position if they voted against it. If you're a proponent of having marijuana businesses in your community. If in that case, it would have to go to a vote. It would have to go to the ballot box. The people, again, if they wanted to ban it after previously the voters passed it, you would have to go to the people at the ballot box, and they would have to have a vote. And if a majority of people voted in favor of banning it, then the ban would pass. But it could not be a unilateral action via the normal kind of public official process, governmental process, whether it be the Board of Selectmen or the City Council. They would not be able to ban it without going to the ballot box. Now, that is not the case in the case where a city or town voted no on question 4. In that case, it would be able to be banned at the city council or selectman level.
And staying on the pot shop part of it, I got an email from a reader the other day basically asking, can I sell edibles now? And I told him no. I think I gave him the right.
It's just, that's an easy one. No, you can't. You can't at all, and you wouldn't be able to previously. So you just can't. So you have to, for better or worse, we have a agency that's going to be set up, the Cannabis Control Commission. They're going to promulgate regulations over the next several months here. And there will be a mechanism in place via the regulations. There'll be an application process. So if you want to sell pot edibles, you can go kind of follow the rules, and I encourage you to apply when they open applications up in April of 2018.
And do medical marijuana? I know in the original law, medical marijuana shops got a slight leg up in the if they wanted to pivot and also do recreational marijuana. Does that stay intact in the compromise?
So the way it was drafted in question 4 is not intact. So the leg up has been significantly reduced. So it's a very, very small preference now. It's essentially kind of a 2-week window whereby they'll look at the application, the medical marijuana providers first, and so their applications will review first. But that's really the extent of the leg up. There is what's kind of this concept of accreditation. So the extent that you are provisionally licensed or have final registration in the medical program, which means you're either open or about to be open, you would have, they're not going to have to reinvent the wheel. You're not going to have to go through a whole new application process. They'll give you credit for where you are in the application process, and your approvals will stand your approvals under the medical program would kind of transfer over to the recreational program, but really not. They've even the playing field in terms of groups applying, kind of being on equal footing from the outset.
And I'll note that under the bill that's heading to the governor's desk right now, medical marijuana stays untaxed, while recreational marijuana will face up to 20% tax. And there's also, if a city or town works out a community host agreement with a company, I believe they can also levy an additional 3% take on, say, gross sales, if I'm interpreting that correctly. Yeah.
So actually, one of the changes to the law, which I think is significant, is now community host agreements are now mandated, and so you're right. It's 17% tax plus the city or town can elect to do the 3% additional tax, which I'm sure they'll all do. There's no reason they wouldn't. And then there is this kind of mandate of a host agreement, which is the maximum on the host agreement is 3% of gross. I don't know if we'll see all the host agreements go up to 3% of gross, but essentially what that means is it could be a 23%, at the local level, a 6% kind of tax if you include the host agreement piece of it.
Now, during the campaign, the fight over legalization of marijuana, the side that was against it, I think they ran one of their ads where it made it seem like there were pot shops on every corner, they're springing up like Starbucks. Under this bill, what exactly? How is that going to play out? How is it going to depend on zoning?
I'm laughing at that ad. that kid Kevin in that ad. But sorry, I didn't mean it.
No, it's okay. It's a.
So no, will there be pot shops at every corner? No. Time, place, and manner zoning restrictions will be in place. This has been one of those scare tactics. It was used by the opposition. We're still going to see challenges at the local level to get marijuana businesses there because people. Still have the stigma around marijuana. They still think the businesses are going to bring negative things or have a negative impact on the communities. So it will take time, but there will not be. They'll be able to ban them as we just discussed, and many communities will. Some already have, and those bans will stay in effect. And then we'll see ballot initiatives, and we'll see action taken by local government officials, whether it's selectmen or city councilors, to ban it or severely restrict it. So that will be a challenge, but the hope is that these financial incentives, plus a lot of history in other states such as Colorado, Washington, and Massachusetts now, a little bit of history with the 12 medical marijuana dispensaries that we have open, will show that, and the evidence does show that these, we don't have these negative impacts that everyone's afraid of. And in terms of what you see in that ad, people remember it with the pot leaves and all that. That's just not going to be allowed, and it wasn't allowed under medical, and it won't be allowed under the Cannabis Control Commission's regulations and the new law that we have.
And you mentioned that we have about 11 medical pot shops right now. just for folks who've been following along or not following along, Massachusetts voted for medical marijuana in 2012.
November 2012.
And there's only been 11 that have opened since then. They had to revamp the process after Charlie Baker became governor. They redid the process at the Department of Public Health, and as we were talking about earlier, that's going to be rolled under the Cannabis Control Commission now. And the Control Commission is a new agency. It's going to have 5 people. You guys wanted 3 originally, and you also put it right under the state treasurer's office. And can you tell me about the thinking about that? Because I think some folks were like, well, why put it under the state treasurer's office? I think I know, but...
I mean, look, this was something that was discussed, and I still believe that it should fall under the treasurer's office. I mean, we can kind of just look. Our treasurer has been very proactive already. They're used to dealing with businesses. We felt that this, in terms of when we think about the marijuana industry, we wanted to expand responsibly. They already control the regulation of alcohol. They had the infrastructure in place, and they were proactive. They were ready on a lot of planning with no budget. So I think that's one of the things. Maybe my personal disappointments from this measure is that it didn't stay under the treasurer. The treasurer still does maintain, still has a vote on the commission. Still will be able to appoint the chair. But I think that the notion was that, this isn't really, we want to get away from law enforcement. Why? Nothing against our fine attorney general, but do we really need to have an attorney general oversight of this? Probably not. I mean, we're really talking about regulations. We don't want to be talking about marijuana in the criminal context. We want to be talking marijuana in the public health context. How do we roll out an industry that's responsible, where businesses can do well, where consumers can get their product, and we can kind of reduce or eliminate, definitely reduce the illicit marketplace. So the treasurer made the most sense, non-law enforcement, and also business, used to dealing with businesses as they have in the liquor industry.
We have Kelly asking, when will stores actually open? Now the current law is July 2018. The state treasurer said the other day, I don't know if that can happen. What's your sense of do you think that they can do that by July?
I think it will happen. I mean, I think now, and I understand the treasurer's comments, but they'll work hard over there, I'm sure, and the commission will work hard. And the mandate is that by March we're going to have regulations, and the law calls for applications to be accepted in April of 2018. And then the next date is June. No one can be licensed before June, but I would expect around June. I think we'll see some licenses issued, and so I do think July is possible and feasible, especially for the current operators, the operators that are selling medical marijuana. They're growing it now. They're processing it. They're producing the edibles and the MIPS, and they're selling it. So the transition for them is really more going to be a legal process more than anything else, and a regulatory process. So I think it is possible. I don't think we're going to see 100 stores, but we could see maybe 10 or 12 in July, which begs the question: How are the operators going to meet demand? And that.
And I think that's happening in Nevada, right?
Exactly.
And now, I don't know how much you've been following Nevada. Can you talk a little bit about exactly what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Nevada, their law passed the same time our law did. They were able to. They didn't need to do tweaks to their law. They just kind of followed it and went with the guideline. Similar kind of timeframes that we had in question before. So it shows that, by the way, it was possible. But the Commonwealth went a different direction, and that's fine. But essentially, what happened in Nevada is, I think about 2 weeks ago, the stores opened, and 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they declared an emergency, a state of emergency, because there isn't enough marijuana to service the demand. So we look at, it's about 2 or 3 million less. The population is less, about by 2 million as compared to the Commonwealth. So it's going to be an issue, and it's just a matter of you have to have enough producers, enough growers of marijuana to reach the demand, to meet the demand, and I don't see that happening here. I think there's going to be a shortage here, like we saw in Nevada.
Yeah, and certainly since we are on the eastern seaboard, we're a major hub. I understand that's entirely possible. I want to talk about one of the lawmakers who was involved in negotiations on this said to us reporters that part of the complexity of in part attempting to rewrite this. I mean, they could have passed their own bill for years. They had plenty of chances, but in tackling this rewrite in the last few months, this is a topic that touches so many sectors. Criminal justice, workplace, and I wanted to touch on that because you just won a pretty big case up at the Supreme Judicial Court on medical marijuana. I just wanted to give you a chance to talk a little bit about that and how that came about.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you for bringing that up. Our case was Christina Barbudo, and she was a patient, medical marijuana patient. We took this case on about 2 years ago. She suffers from Crohn's disease and was lawfully provided a written certification to take medical marijuana to treat her Crohn's disease. She's tried a number of other medications and none of them worked. And this was really just for her to use outside of work, at home, at night. She used it not often at all, and just used it to help her appetite, and it really did help her appetite. And she applied for a job, informed them, the job told them that they were drug testing. She informed them that she, of her medical condition, that she used just a small amount of marijuana outside of work. She was not impaired at work, and it would not be impaired in work in any way. They initially told her things would be fine, no problem. She went to a day of work, had a great day at work, came back, and after her drug test results came back positive, as she'd warned them it would, she was immediately terminated. They essentially said, we follow federal law, and we're not going to listen to you or talk to you at all about your condition. So this was a case we felt really strongly about. I worked with Matt Fogelman from Fogelman & Fogelman in Newton, Massachusetts. We were the marijuana law side, he was the employment law side. And we were fortunate enough on Monday to get a ruling from the Supreme Court which affirmed that medical marijuana patients in the Commonwealth have the same protections under our disability law against discrimination than any other patient taking another medication would. So that kind of really was important. Obviously, our client's very, very happy. We still have to now litigate the case to the end on the facts and on discovery, but it was a big ruling. It was the first of its kind in the country. So it's a win for the patients. So in digesting this new law, we're kind of making sure that this doesn't do anything to hurt what we achieved, what Christina achieved really from the ruling on Monday.
And certainly because of legalization of recreational here, I think we're probably going to see a lot of cases pop up in the court system. I think that's why I get a lot of emails about all sorts of law firms now opening up specific marijuana practices.
Sure.
So it sounds like it's going to be a pretty expansive. I guess in journalism terms, it's a beat, but in your folks focusing on something like that.
Yeah, and we've seen that in Colorado. Lots of firms getting into the space, and it's a great practice area for lawyers. It's very interesting.
I think we're coming up on the end. If folks want to add any sort of comment or question, feel free. I wanted to ask kind of what happens next in the next. What do you see happening in the next few months? Pot shops aren't going to open until July 2018, probably. That's still got to caveat that. But what do you see happening in the next couple months? What are people going to experience, if anything?
Yeah, not much will change. We will see the first thing is the Cannabis Advisory Board. It's a 25-member group that's going to advise the Cannabis Control Commission. We'll have those appointments within the next month. Then by September 1st, we'll have the 5-member Cannabis Control Commission members that will be advised by the advisory board. And then we'll have a period of rulemaking, just digging in on the rules, really kind of hitting, flushing out all these issues within the law, making the rules, setting up the rules for the application process for how these stores are going to be regulated. So not much will change other than we'll have movement towards these shops getting open. And then, as I said, in April of 2018 is when we'll first start accepting applications. So if anyone out there is interested in getting into the business side of it, or opening a store or grow, that's the date to look out for, that April 2018 date.
Last question, I think, from somebody on Facebook. Do companies need to bid in order to open stores, and will there be a system in place where, let's say, a mom and pop store can open? They might not have as much capital as a kind of bigger company.
Yeah, so this has been the hope. I mean, when we wrote question 4, the goal was to allow mom and pop, and unfortunately, I'll speak honestly as a lawyer, is the industry the way it's been. It's almost overregulated, and it makes it high cost to enter the market, and that's something actually we don't like. I don't like personally. We want us to be able to see mom and pops enter the marketplace, and I think the law will be much more open to mom and pop businesses. I don't want to overpromise here, but than the medical marijuana law did. Mostly because we're going to allow for different types of licenses. So if you just want to do a retail license, you know, right now we're vertically integrated, so you have to cultivate, process, and sell your own marijuana. But you'll be able to have these separate licenses. So just to be a cultivator, just be a producer, just be a retailer, that will lower the cost. So I do think there will be mom and pop, and I do think that the way we wrote question 4 and much of that language has remained, that we wanted the application process to be perfunctory. We did not want it to be merit-based, cutthroat, where whoever is, you know, at the deepest ties to lobbyists or political connections, we didn't want them. We want to try and make it as equal a playing field as possible, and I think that's somewhat been achieved. It's going to still be expensive, but the hope is that mom and pop businesses will be able to enter. So I would encourage people to not just be discouraged. Because the medical, if you look at the medical program, you could be discouraged. That did not favor mom and pop businesses.
And this will also allow for like kind of smoke shops like they have in Europe, right, where you can gather with friends and smoke marijuana or consume marijuana. Is that
that provision remained? That was in question 4, so that's all positive. Now I wouldn't hold your breath. It's not going to happen. That will be probably the last license type to be issued, if I had to guess. But it does still allow for it. There's regular open. There's public health issues around smoking in public, so those issues will have to be addressed, but there is an allowance for that type of license, and we're seeing that in other states now, Colorado and Alaska, where they are allowing some, social gathering, open consumption within a public business. So we will see that, but I think that will be the last license to issue.
Right, because part of the law is that there's no public consumption of marijuana. That is still
still in the law. So it would have to be under a license in an environment where they're dealing with issues of secondhand smoke. So presumably that would be outdoors, or people would be vaping or consuming edibles.
Last question for me. I know it's like this is a lot of things to cover, but last question for me. Marijuana still remains illegal at the federal level. The Attorney General Jeff Sessions, I think Attorney General Healy around here said he has an obsession with marijuana. What's your read about how the Trump administration is going to handle marijuana, as obviously more states are moving towards legalization?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're anticipating guidance any day now. They have a committee set up under the Attorney General of the United States. They have a kind of a marijuana committee set up, and they are apparently looking at how they are going to handle this issue. Many of your viewers, and I'm sure you've heard of the Cole Memorandum, which came out in 2013, which was the document for marijuana lawyers and for businesses, but that sets forth the federal law enforcement priorities, and we'll see how much, if that's tinkered with, or if that's, what revisions, if any, occur after that committee submits its report. Overall, my gut says, and if you just look at Nevada, the Attorney General could have taken some action to stop Nevada's program opened up, and I think the Attorney General Sessions was there about a week and a half later giving a talk. He didn't mention marijuana at all. So I think that's a positive sign that we will kind of see a continuation of the policies under Obama, which was the Cole Memorandum, which said that if you were fully compliant with state law and you were taking account, you were careful not to allow for diversion to other states or diversion of the product to minors, and that you were following state law to a T, and that the state law had a good law in place with strict regulations, that you'd be in a fairly stable and safe environment to operate lawfully under state law. But it's a wait and see, and that's why our recommendation to our clients is just don't look before you leap when you're getting into this business.
Good advice all around. I'm Gdumcius. He's Adam Fine, attorney specializing in marijuana. And we've been talking about the marijuana law, that it's going to be looking like it's going to be on the governor's desk by the end of the week. Lawmakers who rush through a rewrite. And check MassLive.com for more. We're going to be covering this as Massachusetts moves into a whole new era, once known as the home of the Puritans. We're changing gears here, so follow along, MassLive.com. Thank you.